Can you guys believe that my podcast is literally ranked in the top 10% of podcasts globally? I am so excited, and I could not do this and be here and be even on the rank without all of you guys. And so I just want to say thank you. I know I thank you every single episode, but I mean it, you guys. This I have felt is my true calling, and without you guys, it wouldn't be possible. And what I found out was if you go and leave me a good review, it puts me higher on the ranking, and it will put me on the algorithm for people who are just scrolling and looking for podcasts. It'll put me on their page. So if you could take just a few minutes to go on and leave me a great review, I would love that so much. So I really wanted to talk to you guys about what choices you have when dealing with a toxic person or somebody with just toxic traits that seem to just wear you down, right? But then I realized in order for us to talk about how to set healthy boundaries, we have to understand what a healthy boundary is. And if you are anything like me, you probably in your life have inserted toxic boundaries as a way of controlling and manipulating others instead of implementing healthy boundaries. And it wasn't honestly until the last couple of years that I even learned what a healthy boundary was. I have both sides of the extreme in my circle. I have the people who literally use boundaries to control everybody. Everything is, you can't cross my boundary. This is my boundary, respect my boundary. And then I have the opposite side, and they're like, boundaries are manipulation. Boundaries are meant to control. Boundaries are abusive. Boundaries, right? I know each one of us have people in our lives who really do view boundaries as selfish. And don't get me wrong, if you're not using them correctly and you don't understand what a boundary is, you likely are being selfish with your boundaries, and you likely are being toxic and controlling. Boundaries are one of the most misunderstood aspects when it comes to self-growth. Yet they are the foundation for healthy relationships, self-respect, and your emotional well-being. So here is what a boundary is. A boundary is what you tell somebody you are going to do, and it requires the other person to do absolutely nothing. I bet you have felt before like you have tried to set a boundary with somebody toxic or narcissistic, and you're just like, well, shit, it just doesn't work. Like, they literally don't respect my boundary. And that's exactly how I used to feel, especially when I was trying to insert my boundaries. And it sounded a lot like this. You are not going to speak to me that way. Do not come over to my house anymore. And did you hear how controlling that sounded? That was me making a request to you to not speak to me that way, which is not a boundary. You can assertively say, you can't speak to me that way, but at the end of the day, they're going to do what they want to do. Setting boundaries is 100% what you're going to do if their behavior does not change. So it can sound like this. Hey, when you speak to me that way, it makes me feel really withdrawn, and I feel belittled, and I feel disrespected. And there's two ways this conversation can go, because if this person loves you and this person isn't toxic, they're going to want to hear this feedback, and they're going to want to work on their behavior and how they speak to you. But most of us aren't here because we're dealing with people who care about us, right? Most of us are here because we have a toxic person in our life that we don't know how to navigate. And so the response to that would probably be something pretty condescending. You know, maybe they'd make some passive aggressive jokes about how sensitive you are or how you can't ever take a joke. You know, maybe they'd continue to mock you. And so this is where the boundary lies. So that's when you say, you know, if you continue to treat me this way and speak to me this way, I'm going to have to leave. And do you see how defining that boundary had absolutely nothing to do with controlling what the other person said or did. It's all about you and your behavior and what you will or won't tolerate. Something you can ask yourself when you are starting to insert boundaries is what I'm doing creating a healthy dynamic, or am I punishing and controlling? So the silent treatment, cutting somebody off with no explanation, withholding affection, guilt tripping, and using boundaries as a way to avoid accountability. These are all forms of emotional abuse that are often mistaken for healthy limits. So if your boundary only benefits you and it leaves your partner, your friend, your family, anybody leaving confused, dismissed, or even like questioning the reality of what's going on, it's not a boundary. That is manipulation. So I may sound a little redundant right now, but it is so important to know that we have zero control over somebody else and what they do and how they act. And we can put so much time and energy and fighting. And all of this chaos and suffering happens because we didn't do our job of setting a boundary from the beginning. And a simple way that I like to envision boundaries is imagine yourself in a house. Boundaries are the front door. You get to decide who comes in and who goes, how long they stay, and what type of behavior is allowed inside. I mean, I know you wouldn't just let anybody walk into your house, right? I mean, come on, this is your personal safe space. So nobody uninvited is allowed to just come on in and break in. So the same goes for our emotional well-being, and this is where boundaries come in. Are we going to allow people to come in and break us down emotionally and invade our mental and physical space? No, absolutely not. So when you're thinking of a boundary, think of it as this house, and your boundary is the front door. And if somebody is going to get disrespectful, out you go. Close the door. And there's all sorts of different type of boundaries. There's emotional boundaries, physical boundaries. Are you a hugger? Do you want somebody to come in and invade your personal space? There's time boundaries and mental boundaries. And when you set a boundary, you're not rejecting people. You're rejecting harmful behavior. And oftentimes, unhealthy people will twist the narrative, right? To make it seem like you are pushing people away and unapproachable. But what you're really doing is saying, hey, I'm open to connecting. I'm open to hearing your side. I'm open to having a relationship with you, but only on the terms that respects my well-being. And honestly, I still struggle with setting boundaries with people who tend to be aggressive and dominating. And dealing with these types of people, it's always going to be hard. They truly see your boundaries as disrespectful. And these type of people, they're used to just running you over, doing whatever they want, saying whatever they want. Everybody has to walk on eggshells around them. They're not used to somebody removing themselves when they become disrespectful. Setting boundaries makes you a hell of a lot harder to control and manipulate. So they're going to dig their heels in. It's going to get harder with people who have these very aggressive, dominating personalities. And so it's going to be uncomfortable when you have to actually get up and walk away. When you say, hey, like you speaking to me that way, it's not okay with me and I'm going to have to walk away. And when they continue, you get up and you walk away and it is going to feel so uncomfortable. You're probably going to feel a little bit embarrassed. Guilt and shame is going to start rising into your chest. It's perfectly normal to feel anxious and to second guess yourself, or to even, quite frankly, feel scared. Like, I can't believe I actually have to get up and walk away from this person who has been dominating me for years. And I want you to ask yourself, when is the last time they asked you when you felt disrespected? When is the last time they cared about your feelings? When is the last time they were considerate about the things that they said to you, the way that they spoke to you, the way that they commented on your parenting, the way that they talked about politics around you? And when did they self-reflect on their actions to make sure that you felt safe and secure? Setting boundaries can feel deeply uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to prioritizing everybody else's feelings over your own. But please remember, you are not responsible for managing other people's emotions to your boundaries. Your boundary may upset somebody. They may be deeply disappointed, but your healthy boundary is not causing anyone harm. And in a safe relationship, the only thing that a healthy boundary is going to do is to continue to make your relationship stronger. And that uncomfortable feeling that you feel when you have to finally implement this boundary and act on it, that's temporary, okay? That feeling will come on like a massive wave, right? Crashing in, and then it'll calm. But you know what? Constantly living your life to please others and to quote unquote keep the peace with toxic people is a never-ending cycle of exhaustion. You will give and give and give and give until there is nothing left. And here's something else that I want to leave you with that will give you a sense of peace about instilling boundaries with toxic people. Is the mistake that we make with toxic people is we think that the person that we're instilling this boundary with is going to behave like a rational, well-balanced, mentally stable, safe person. But if they were a rational, safe person, they wouldn't be toxic in the first place, right? We wouldn't have all this pent-up anxiety about when they're around or what they're going to say or how they're going to be hurtful. So if you go at boundaries with the mindset that you're going to get them, you're going to be the one to get them to see reality for what it is. You're going to be able to get them to become emotionally safe. You will get completely sucked in to their chaos and you will be depleted because toxic people, they don't know any other way. So you cannot expect a healthy reaction from an unhealthy person. And someone who benefits from your lack of boundaries will always see your limits as the problem. And honestly, their discomfort is not your responsibility. So when that guilt comes creeping in, remind yourself, this is why you set the boundary in the first place. And you have to stand firm in that and let go of trying to control how everyone around you is going to react. So I want to challenge you today. We have learned that boundaries have absolutely nothing to do with other people and what they choose to do or controlling them. I want you to set one boundary. Start small, but you need to make it so firm and be so confident in that one boundary. Maybe it's saying no for the first time in your entire life, or even carving out time for yourself. You can implement boundaries with family or friends by letting them know your preferred hours for a conversation. And that can sound like, hey, I would love to catch up. I'm only available between 6 and 8 p.m. on Tuesday night. Or maybe you have a friend who constantly trauma dumps on you all the time and you just need to create a little bit of space. That emotional boundary can sound like, hey, I care about you so much right now. Right now, I'm really focusing on myself, but I will be available on Saturday evening. I would love to catch up more then. And let's not forget one of the areas we all struggle with is boundaries within our work environment. How many of us are being pushed past our limits and have all of these expectations on us to completely get ran over? And it takes away from our family time and our time for ourselves. It's time for you to set healthy boundaries in your work environment, okay? Let's say it's 5:50 and you are off the clock at 6 p.m. and somebody comes running in and they just offload all of these things that you need to follow up on. This healthy boundary can sound a lot like, hey, I'm finishing up at 6 p.m., but I'm happy to follow up on these on Monday morning. look at how much peace that created. So I'm challenging you today, whether it be your work, your time, a physical boundary, an emotional boundary, find somewhere in your life that you are just feeling depleted and drained. And that is going to be the greatest indicator of where you need to insert a boundary. So take the first step, make the boundary, because you deserve a peaceful life. You deserve to value your time and who comes in and out of your emotional house. You control the front door. And when you create this space for healthy boundaries, you create space for healthier relationships. And not only that, you become strong and empowered. And don't you want that for yourself? And once you take that first step, setting a boundary, you know what I want you to do? I want you to go find me on Instagram, Renee Spencer, and I want you to share with me your experience, how you felt, what the boundary was. Were you scared? Did you feel empowered after? I want to hear about it. You're not alone in this. Together, you and I, we can support each other in making healthy choices and creating the lives that we deserve. And I know I've said this 1,000 times, but remember, a boundary requires other people to do nothing. It's about what you do, how you respond, how you react. It is not controlling and it is not selfish. You've got this. I am cheering you on every step of the way. Thank you so much for being here. I am your friend and your host, and I will see you in the next episode. I love you guys.